Great. So in our conversations today, please be respectful in conversations, in questions, in the chat. We're really grateful for having so many folks from the city, from local government, from our partners at Lyman Bird who are here to work with us. And we want to encourage the folks who are participating to be respectful of their hard work and their efforts, as well as the varying opinions that we might have within our group. Another reminder is we want to avoid jargons and acronyms. So if you're using if you're using a technical transportation term, please be sure that you define it. Ideally share a link in the chat so that we can all learn about what it is you're talking about. Not all of us are transportation professionals, and we want to create an inclusive space for learning. We also want to be mindful of time. This meeting is an hour long. We want to encourage more follow-up and more folks to be able to share. So we're going to be responding to questions outside of our CMC meetings. So that will happen during the notes, which I'll talk about in a second, and also direct answers to folks who raise questions. So we're hoping this will help us keep our meetings focused and respectful. And I really want to encourage people to use the chat to share comments and feedback. We will capture that and it will be recorded in our notes as well. So I want to take just a moment to ask our city partners who are here on the call today to give a quick introduction of themselves. And perhaps I am going to ask Grace Kyung if she's willing to do just a quick hello.
Hello, Grace Kyung, City of St. Louis Mayor's Office.
Great, thanks Grace. Glad to have you here. Andrew?
So I'm Andrew. Hi, I'm Andrew Lackey. I'm with the City of St. Louis Office on the Disabled.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And we have one person on the phone. Is that a city staff member? Okay, I don't think it is.
Dennis is on the phone.
Okay, hi Dennis. Glad you're here. Thanks for being here. And we'll have some other city staff joining us shortly. Okay, so our next agenda item is our minutes from last month. I'm going to drop the agenda in the chat for those of you who don't have it in front of you. And then I'm also going to drop in the minutes from January. So they were circulated in the email earlier this week. And I want to note and thank Dawn for her help in our new meeting minutes format. You'll see that the responses to the questions that were raised, the ones that we have so far, are indicated in blue. We'll continue to make updates, and if there are future, if we get responses to questions that were raised in the January agenda, we'll be sure to include them in the February meeting minutes so that we're still capturing that and sending it directly to folks. Are there any questions or concerns about the minutes before we send them off to their final destination? Okay. Hearing none, we are going to move on to our next topic. So our next area is an open space for members of the committee and folks who are visiting us here to share their concerns. So rather than having a dialogue, we're inviting members of the committee to speak for up to 2 minutes about things that they've observed, things they've seen out in the community that they want to share. We're going to be taking detailed notes, and then we will follow up with direct responses from the appropriate people in charge. We're not going to ask for any verbal response or feedback during this portion, but know that we are paying attention and we are going to make sure that anything that you say is shared. Just as one blanket reminder for all of these things, anytime you see a specific concern about maintenance, about something that's missing, something that's gone wrong, you can bring it up here, but we also encourage you to submit it to the CSB. We'll put a link in the chat. That's always the best first destination to make sure that we have that captured and that the city is aware of it. I want to open up the floor if anyone has any concerns they want to raise, or Cheryl, I think you're on the call. If I know that you have a concern you'd like to bring up.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So my concern is a sidewalk blocked in the 40, I think it's 200, I can't remember, of Forest Park Avenue, where the Goodwill used to be, and construction is currently going on there now. So I happen to be walking in that very block between Sarah and heading toward Boyle. So the entire sidewalk is blocked, and there are orange barriers there at the site of this construction, but no signage at the intersection indicating that the sidewalk is closed or to detour to continue crossing. So when I got to the block area, which the orange barriers are clear to see from the intersection, but I didn't realize it would also block what would be an easement and a possible path around that construction. And so I walked into the street where there were cars parked at the parking space. So it raised a concern for me. I took a picture of that and submitted it on the city's website, Citizen Service Bureau. And it occurred to me that anybody else who was not on foot or able-bodied would have to turn around and go back. And even if they weren't, unable to navigate the curb and all that, just the idea that there should be signage there before a person would get that far and have to turn around. And I always think about the wheelchairs and how that could be prevented.
Thanks, Cheryl, for raising that concern. And I shared the picture that you shared with me in the chat so that folks can see the area that you're talking about as well. And we'll be sure to pass that on to city officials. It's a good example of talking about our work zone mobility ordinance.
Thank you.
Are there any other concerns or questions that folks would like to raise? We did receive one other concern via email from Kim Hayes, who's not able to attend this meeting. Kim says that Morgan Ford could be a prime road for improvements because it ends at the river trail and goes all the way through Tower Grove Park and beyond, and that it's a street that people frequently cross. Our parks are a great gift and an asset, and if they could be better connected for bikes, people on foot, and transit, that would be really wonderful. Okay. Low on concerns this week, which is fine for us. Please feel free to also email them in if you have other ones. We are going to very quickly make our transition to our next agenda item. We're really grateful today to have some representatives from Bird and Lime here to join us. We have been very curious about an update on scooter operations for quite a while. And so we're really pleased, especially as we enter the spring and summer, to have our partners here to talk a little bit about their plans for the 2022 season. We're very interested in hearing updates on the social equity and inclusion zones, and hearing more about how folks on this committee can support micromobility. I'm sure we're going to have some questions that will come up, but I would like to give our visitors a chance to talk a little bit. And maybe I'll hand it over first to Adam Davis from Bird, and then we will go over to David Sudbrook from Lime. Does that sound good?
Thank you, Liz. Are you good if I share my screen?
Make sure you can do that. Yes.
All right, let's see here. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Let me try again.
It should work now. You can't share because my playlist was consuming the entire sharing apparatus. So now you should be able to share.
Here we go. All right. Are you able to see the screen here? Perfect. Well, just want to start out, Adam Davis. I manage government partnerships for Bird, and we also have my colleague Mahir on the call, who is the general manager of operations. What I love about this one, I actually live in St. Louis, which is great. I used to work with an organization there called Launch Code and love the city of St. Louis. And just when Liz reached out, I was excited to be able to participate in this. And so just wanted to, as Liz touched on, kind of give a highlight of where the program is currently and what we're looking to accomplish in 22 and beyond. So, as I shared, we have Mahir on the call as well, and I manage government partnerships. The mission of Bird and Lime as well goes far beyond just electric vehicles. It's to make communities more accessible for individuals to get around, more equitable access. It's that first last mile transportation to public infrastructure. And so we just want to reiterate that it's just not about the small vehicles that you see there. It's not just about recreation. There are very, very essential purposes to having this mode of transportation within a community. And my colleague Mahir will be able to highlight that just a little bit further in the presentation. So we definitely want to be a partner for the city of Sarasota or city of St. Louis in their sustainability initiatives. And we are strong at combating climate change and improving air quality. And we just, at the end of the day, want to make the sustainable choice the easy choice. And, you know, we're at a point where it's cool for adults to be able to ride scooters. So I'll turn it over to Mahir to talk a little bit about our fleets and the program up to this point.
Great. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Mahir. I've actually been with Bird since we launched in St. Louis in 2018. So I've been able to see the market grow as we have as well. I remember when we launched with these vehicles here on the left, the Bird Zero, and now currently we're operating the Bird 2 and the Bird 3 in St. Louis. So really excited to upgrade the fleet, get our latest and greatest technology into St. Louis, and continue to help providing accessible transportation to the city. Awesome. If there are any other electronic vehicle nerds out there like me, this is the specs on our latest and greatest vehicle. Typically, what they say is it's not a high functioning electric vehicle. It's a very low functioning spaceship, or rocket ship, as we like to call it, because we have some really awesome technology, some of which is seen in some rocket ships and rocket science overall. But basically, we've gathered a ton of data and insight over the 3 to 4 years that we've been in St. Louis, and now we've used it to come up with this really awesome vehicle that can do really cool things, and like some of the things like skid detection and like having certain like anti-tip kickstands and things that we've learned from previous vehicles, we've now been able to integrate into this one. Awesome. So just giving an overall recap, since we launched in 2018 in St. Louis, we've been able to engage with over 315,000 different riders. We've, over 1.7 million rides or miles have been ridden on Birds on 1.2 million total trips. For reference, that's like riding from Forest Park to the Arc like 250,000 times. So it's a lot of miles, and also super environmentally friendly. Been able to save over 650,000 pounds of CO2 emissions. And then we know that there's a big focus on equitable areas in St. Louis. These are the equity zones that the city and Bird and Lime have been able to outline. And just kind of wanted to share a heat map of what ridership in those different equity zones looks like. We're continuing to try to get vehicles in the right spots in these areas to provide transportation to everyone in the city.
So look at 2022 and beyond. As Mahir was mentioning, that a big focus is equitable access. And what we've come to realize that just defining a geographical area as the equitable point doesn't necessarily mean it's accomplishing the goal. So having a reduced price in those areas doesn't mean somebody can't take a bus from that area to downtown and still not have that need. And so we've come up with different models, such as community pricing, that we'll touch on a little bit. So we just want to take this full circle approach, that we want to make sure that financial aspect isn't a limiting factor, that the vehicle models are not a limiting factor. We have different seated options, the bike, others that we can bring to a community based on need and desires, and then also physical distribution. So it's not just solely congregated in the downtown core, as you saw on that heat map. It's physically distributed throughout the entirety of the city of St. Louis. And we want to make sure that our ride options are affordable. So we have a variety of different options that are out there. Typically, it's $1 to unlock and 39 cents per minute after that, with the average trip costing around just over $7. But we've also come up with different programs such as vaccine rides, where if an individual is going to get their vaccine, there's no cost associated with it. We did during COVID, first responders that they had free access to transportation throughout the pandemic. And then just we want to constantly work with different programs to see if there's different opportunities to have reduced funding. And that's kind of what led to our community pricing, which you'll see there at the bottom, which allows for free unlocks. So you don't pay that dollar, then it's 50% off the ride from there. And so that's low income, veterans, and then we're seeking to work with as many nonprofits. So if anybody on this call has connections or can help us identify them to help spread the word, we want to make sure that everybody in the community has the knowledge. In the mayor's office, I was talking with Nancy Cross and from the city side and just making sure that we're getting the word out there. But then we're also looking, if you look at point 3, equity zone pricing, that in those areas, we will go ahead and apply an extra discount to try to drive ridership to the scooters. So that will be coming in 2022 in a hope to drive ridership for the inequitable zones. So one of the things that Mahir is going to touch on is just one of the limitations that we've had in the city of St. Louis, and that's a curfew that has been implemented for a few months now.
Yep. So for those who don't know, currently there is a curfew in downtown and downtown west areas in St. Louis, where after 8 p.m. vehicles will become, inoperable. So the month that curfew was enacted, over 14,000 trips were prohibited after 8 p.m. Almost all of 62% of all the trips that occur within a 3-hour period between 8 and 11. Estimated around 51% of all prohibited trips would be meaningful rides, meaning somebody that's actually commuting to or from work or running, an essential errand. And so typically what we've seen is that, although the curfew was implemented for, right reasons, there has been an impact to being able to provide that accessible transportation to people trying to get to and from downtown. And as mentioned, more than half of these trips would be meaningful rides, meaning somebody commuting to and from work or, an errand, running an errand or something like that. And then this heat map on the right just shows, people that scanned a bird, but were not able to start their ride because of the curfew, and what that demand looks like for being able to ride a bird after 8 p.m. in downtown. Awesome. And then this is my favorite part. We see numbers and we look at numbers a lot. I think generally speaking, being able to see, words and actual personal testimonials. So we have some on here that, that say something along the lines of, my scooter keeps dying. I use them to get to and from work. I'm a customer who keeps complaining. I am the customer who keeps complaining about my daily commute due to the scooter shutting down. So, that's something that we take to heart. Want to, be able to make sure that these people can get to and from work. And then some positive anecdotes as well that are really nice to see. Awesome ride on a beautiful day, so fun, and got to where I needed to go way quicker than I ever imagined. Very convenient because I needed to get downtown, scooted, the bike, and then put it back on a rack. There's so much fun, great way to get around the city. I had my bag. I had a bag that I could not go get into the stadium. Took a scooter back to my hotel to drop it off. Saved me a 30-minute walk. Was able to get back to the game, before the bottom of the first inning. Assuming he's talking about a Cardinals game there. So, really cool to see these positive anecdotes as well.
So
Great.
We are happy to answer any questions, or if you'd prefer for Lime to go and then have joint question answer, then I can stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, let's have Lime talk a little bit, and then we'll come back and do question and answers, because I think they may raise some other questions as well. So David, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you both for that presentation.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to pass it over to our ops manager there in St. Louis, Allison Form. She's on the call. She's certainly more informed about the city and knows exactly what's going on. So go ahead and take it away, Allison.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Forms. Like he said, I've been here since the beginning of 2020. Happy to be here. So happy we're invited to this meeting. And I think it's okay if I go ahead and share my screen as well.
Yes.
All right. All right. So first, sorry about that. I just want to dive into St. Louis ridership so far since we launched in 2018. So we've had over 1 million trips so far, almost 300,000 riders, 1.1 million miles, and the 1.3 million pounds of CO2 saved. Average distance, 0.6 of a mile, and median trip 8 minutes. We do tend to see longer trips during the summer just because of the warmer weather, and in the winter, it's definitely very cold. So being on a scooter out there in 20-degree weather is not super fun. We have seen 12,500 rides within the target neighborhoods for 2021. We have most of the rides that we're seeing are mainly in Dutchtown area, in Carr Square and Columbus Square. This is definitely a focus for 2022, as I'm not as familiar with these areas, to be honest with you. So if anyone's on this call that would like to work with me, and we just want to make sure we have scooters in the right areas for people that need them and the ridership that is, needed in those areas. Plans for 2022. So we're definitely going to be increasing our fleets. We usually cut our fleet down to about 200 scooters for the winter. And then we're going to be increasing our fleet starting in March through April and May. And we're going to be focusing a lot on rider education and safety pop-ups. So what a safety pop-up is we will set up a tent like you see in this picture, and we will actually have scooters out there. We'll demo the scooters for typically new riders. It's just a really good safe space for people to come by. And, we do find that people are a little hesitant to jump on a scooter for the first time because they might just be a little intimidated by them. So when we have these demos, everyone's super excited that we can walk them through the whole process. They can get on the scooter, they can ride it within the safe space, and just help them moving forward to actually get on scooters in the real world. We also go over rider safety. So some things we talk about are just rider education as far as, if you have a helmet available, definitely wear a helmet at all times. One rider per scooter. So no double riding. I'm not sure if any of you have seen that, but that's something we definitely preach to not do. Abide all traffic laws, ride responsibly, don't drink and ride, obviously. Respect pedestrians right away, and then be aware of road threats. We'll also be giving away, having helmet giveaways, and then in-app education. So if you open up our Lime app right now, you'll see a pop-up message that just states, you must be 18 plus to ride, do not ride on the sidewalks, park scooters responsibly, follow all traffic laws, and do not drink and ride. We'll also be adding a message for riders when they end their trip to confirm that they parked properly, because we do find parking is a major issue in downtown, if you haven't seen that yet. And then Lime Hero, David was going to speak more on this program.
Sure. Thanks, Allison. I have been working quite a bit in a lot of our markets with a lot of our equity programs that Lime is still developing. Lime Hero is something that's been really successful for us in other markets that we haven't launched in St. Louis. We are currently in the process of partnering with nonprofits in St. Louis. I was hoping that I'd have those finalized by today, but I do not, so I don't feel comfortable sharing the names of those groups. But Lime Hero essentially is a way for us to partner with nonprofits who are working with individuals who are, underserved, economically distressed. And what Lime Hero is it allows riders to actually round up their rides to a certain percentage, and all that money goes back into these community organizations. On top of that, we have other sort of platforms that are being developed in other communities where we actually are going to have equity zones and individuals who can sign up for specific memberships to Lime that essentially allow them to ride even up to 5 rides for free a day. This is something that we are really focused on at Lime. We started out as a company that is just trying to engage with cities and be profitable, but we really want to become community partners. So in 2022 in St. Louis, that is a major goal of ours, to be more than just a scooter company that's operating on your streets. We want to ingrain ourselves as a community partner, and also really work through these relationships to create some synergy that makes these equity zones really work. So part of our partnership is also trying to understand the city more and where scooters could help these third shift workers and individuals that really need transportation and affordable transportation. So back to you, Allison.
Thanks, David. So just some ways to support micromobility on our end is obviously ride instead of drive when feasible. Continue advocating for protective bike lanes in the city. Our number one response from riders, they ride on the sidewalks because they don't feel safe riding on the streets in certain areas. So we're super excited because I know there's several projects coming up in St. Louis with protected bike lanes. That's awesome. And then finally, if you see something, it's always helpful to report it to us so we can address it in a timely manner. So we have 3 different ways to address, if you see a scooter that's broken, or if you see just poor parking habits, just in general, you could email us, call or text, or you can just go right into the Line map and you can see under the help section, you can just report an issue. You can actually say what's wrong with the scooter, or you can just report parking, and then we can address it within, a couple of hours. So yeah, so that's really all I have. But yeah, we're open for questions. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much to Allison and David. And Allison, sorry, I missed you in the squares earlier, but we're very glad you're here. So we have a number of questions that are already coming in. Maybe just one fact question to help with. Scooters are not meant to be ridden on the sidewalks, correct? I think Allison implied that. Right. Here's, okay. So, no, they should not be ridden on the sidewalk. They should be ridden on the street or in the bike lanes. All right. I'm gonna start with the questions in the chat, and then if folks have other questions, feel free to put a hand up or wave or drop them in the chat. The first question, Dawn would like to know, how did you estimate that a ride is meaningful? Was there a questionnaire that was filled out by prohibited riders?
Yeah, so the way we estimate that that number or that category of rides is through historical data of what's taken place before. And we certainly, we specifically group riders between, are they commuting type riders based on when they ride and where they ride? And then we can estimate that around 50%. I think 51 was the exact number. Are meaningful rides, meaning it's somebody getting to where they need to go, whether it's a work commute or running an errand or something like that.
Great, thank you. All right, I got Patrick's question, then Kevin, Sam, Jackie. So Patrick asks, are both Lime or Bird meeting the equity goals outlined by the city for the distribution of devices? It often seems like there are many in the central corridor versus north or south.
Yeah, I can take that, or Allison, feel free. I'm good either way.
Yeah, you can start if you want.
Cool. Yeah, I'll say, we're always going to be compliant with the city regulations and what's in the contract. I think specifically if you're seeing birds in one area and not another, it could be because, we have the fleet so spread out. But typically, I think what we've seen also, and this is what we're working with cities for the future of what equity and accessible riding could look like, is location is definitely important. But I think also understanding the people that are low income and need equitable access to transportation and focusing it around them specifically and not necessarily just the area. So having scooters where they live in some of these equity neighborhoods, but also making sure that they have the correct pricing based on their status of low income or senior citizen or veterans or something like that, to make sure that even if they want to use a scooter in downtown and not necessarily just where they live, that they still have that, that option to have, discounts.
And just to follow up, we're meeting the guidelines, but I definitely feel like we need to have scooters in possibly different hotspots to make sure everyone has access to the scooters. So again, if anyone's on this call that has some thoughts on those different neighborhoods and where they feel they're needed most, that would be super helpful for me in general. We could just make sure we create hotspots in those areas and make sure that our juicer team and ops specialists are making sure those particular spots are filled up each day.
Yeah, and just to add something, I know that, looking at several different cities, a lot of times when we start in equity zones, even though vehicles start there, a lot of times they end up in central downtowns because even people in equity zones are moving into those areas. And it's important that you don't just look at scooters or any vehicle in a snapshot of time, because if folks are downtown and need to get back to equity zones, then we have to have those vehicles downtown for them. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's something I work with cities all the time on.
And also, both operators are open to getting community feedback. I mean, we are a newer industry, and so we are at times learning as we go on the best way to make sure that equitable access is throughout the community, but also being able to, when you have like a cap, like be able to put enough to where the demand is in downtown, but also be able to expand out to the other regions of the community. And so we definitely want to work with the city to, best identify ways to get out there.
Great, thank you all. Kevin.
Yeah, thanks all, and I appreciate you all being here. I had a question, and this is coming from my own ignorance. I was not aware of the curfew downtown and downtown west. When was that initiated and for what purpose?
Yeah, I think it was initiated around the middle or the beginning of summer of this year, and I think the purpose, which is a purpose that we're behind, was overall safety. I think there were some incidents that happened on scooters, and so the city made that decision. I think generally speaking, though, there are some other levers we can pull to continue to keep it safe while still being able to allow accessible transportation. And so we're just trying to work with the city to utilize some of those levers.
And is the curfew still in place?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate that. And then I had just a quick question or plug on the mobility and equity front. Are y'all in coordination with Metrolink and Metrobus about placing scooters near transit hubs?
We have not been. There was a call last year about partnering with them, having multimodal accessibility at different hubs, but I haven't heard a response recently about that.
Thanks for bringing those questions up, Kevin. Sam.
Yeah, thanks. Quick on the topic of hubs, is it the scooter companies' priority, or is it more kind of to the city? If we know where a lot of scooters are going to be parked, planning for things like parking hubs, taking some of the street space, blocking it off. So, hey, this is a dedicated scooter parking zone. That's something you guys have done in the past with other cities, or is that mainly responsibility of the city?
No, we're 100% and willing to partner with the city on identifying like lost space. A lot of times, like it's that weird parking spot that doesn't fit a car, but it's just sitting there, to be able to go in and, Lime and Bird both can partner with like what that looks like infrastructure wise, whether it's painted off, but we could definitely, go around with the city and identify what those ideal areas are and put the infrastructure in place.
And then I had one more just quick question. Do you guys keep data on if someone was involved in a crash while on a scooter, or is that just a general police reporting thing? Whether they fell down, hit a curb, got hit by a car, et cetera, et cetera.
We do have data on that. Usually if it's reported by the rider, and then that can be accessible by the city.
Great, thank you. Those are great questions. I'm going to combine two questions together from the chat. Jackie would like to know if any of the companies have considered e-bikes in the St. Louis market. And then Dana is also asking about how our initial focus was originally on bikes, and now we only have scooters, and the initial focus of our micromobility programs was also to encourage active transportation. And so if you can give just a little bit of background on how the switch from bikes to scooters happened, and then what the sort of future for bikes and or e-bikes might be.
So I will be completely honest, I wasn't here when bikes were here in 2018. I do know that they pulled fleet, I believe, by the end of 2018 and switched over to scooters. From what I heard, there was a lot of vandalism happening with the bicycles. And I'm not sure if that was the main reasoning behind pulling the bikes, but that's what I've heard so far from the market. And then we do. And, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was excited. We didn't have e-bikes at that time. And so we're definitely open to exploring what that would look like, since we now have that in our fleet. But just at that time, we didn't have e-bikes.
And the same with mine. We now have e-bikes that we could definitely like talk to the city about providing as well.
Jackie, I don't know if implied in your question is an interest in e-bikes. Do you want to say that? Are you still on this call?
Yeah, I think e-bikes are a little bit more of a powerful commuting mobility tool. And so, thinking about this in terms of equitable transportation, I think considering that in St. Louis would definitely be beneficial.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you, Jackie. I'm going to go to Charles, and then we'll go back to the chat.
Good afternoon. So my question is, do you all keep track of the ages or average age of the person who is using a scooter? And I ask that question because part of the issue, both in South St. Louis and especially North St. Louis, would be you've got elderly people who cannot manage a scooter, but could manage something like a three-wheel bike to be utilized for first and last mile to get to public transportation. So I don't know if you all have considered that as an option or not.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I know Lime, we're working really hard on the future of our hardware, our future scooters, and they are stability and sort of being more sturdy is a core focus. So yes, and a big reason why is because we know around the world that our ridership is younger, right? And if we want to be a part of the overall transit system of all these cities around the world, then we have to have vehicles that are safe and perceived to be safe as well by older individuals.
Yeah, on bird front too. Yeah, absolutely. We are constantly, our R&D team are developing what, like as David was saying, that future looks like. It's a constant evaluating where the market is, what the needs are, and trying to figure out how we can best integrate the technologies into a community. So yes, those conversations are happening, and they'll definitely continue with the city as these technologies are out there. And we look forward to being able to bring those to the city of St. Louis.
Thank you both for that answer. So in the interest of time, just for folks who are asking questions in the chat, I'm going to compile some more of these logistics questions and ask our representatives to send me some emails via after the meeting so that we can make sure we're addressing some of these other questions. So while I figure that out, I'm going to hand it to Taylor to ask his question.
Cool, thanks, Liz. Just wanted to ask briefly, I know, both of the companies have really kind of been able to be successful based on their utilization of the city's right-of-way and a lot of the street space that we currently have. Are there any plans at either company to kind of invest in a more substantial way in providing, protected bike lanes and really significant infrastructure upgrades that can benefit both the companies and other folks within the city of St. Louis?
Yeah, I mean, we're always open to have conversations. So it's definitely working with the community, the city, this group could definitely be a strong partner. So we're always open to have those conversations.
Yeah, we do that with other cities as well. So it wouldn't be the first time we've done it, and definitely something we want to do.
And what's great too is there's a dashboard for the city. So the city side can see where all that heat map you saw, where rides are taking place. And so what's great about that is a lot of times that you and I might think somebody's going to take this road with their bike, but in reality, the users think this road is safer. So you see the pattern shifting out there. So that data is also really good to look at and analyze and figure out where those proper places are to put the infrastructure.
We have a couple of related questions and comments in the chat about scooter parking zone locations. And so I'm curious if both companies could talk just a little bit about how you handle scooter parking zones, identifying them, funding them, and maintaining them.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. So I assume what is meant by scooter parking zones is like actual designated zones with like physical infrastructure. In that situation, there's two types. There's private properties that we can work with and designate scooter parking and actually put physical infrastructure around them. And then if we want to do anything in the public right of way, we would have to collaborate with the city on that. So we're open to it. We have infrastructure. As I said before, we've done it in other cities, and would love to work with this team and other teams to designate some or identify some and then designate them. But again, we would need approval. If it's private property, we'd have to work with that private property. And if it's with the city, we'd have to get city approval.
Yeah, Lime also does this around the country and the world. You know, I'm working with a city right now that's designating corral areas for our scooters, and usually it is a collaboration with the city and making decisions that are strategic and will work not only for constituents but also for the city as a whole.
And we do have, as far as like in the app, we can create mandatory parking zones, so we can geofence certain areas where the rider is forced to park in that certain area. So specifically at WashU, currently on the Danforth campus, we have parking at bike racks, so they can't end their trip anywhere on the campus except at that particular spot.
Great, thank you both for those answers. I want to get to one more question before we close out on our scooter time. Cheryl asked, when the scooter companies first entered the St. Louis market, there were financial benefits to the city of St. Louis that were included as part of the contract. What's the current status on those contracts and the financial income to the city?
Is this in regards to just our annual fees? Is that pertaining to that?
I believe so.
Okay, so we pay, I believe it's $500 per year plus $10 per scooter that we'll be deploying for the year.
And I'm guessing that this is also a question we'll likely need to raise with our city partners to find out how they're utilizing those funds.
Yes, I'm definitely unsure about where the funds are going.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that part. So we have, there's a lot of other questions in the chat, and especially things about kind of what do we do if scooters are not in the right location? What happens when scooters are outside of their bounded zones and are still operating? So we're going to follow up with both the Bird and the Lime team to get some more detailed responses, and we'll make sure to get that both to the people who have raised those questions and also out to the whole group via the notes. I want to thank the Bird and the Lime teams for being here and spending so much time with us. This is really helpful. And we are going to follow up. We'll figure out what our best strategy is to organize folks in this group who are really interested in making sure that we have good infrastructure for micromobility and a continued way to especially address the issues of equity and social inclusion that are inherent in the things that we're trying to do here going forward. So I think we would like to continue working with all of you. In closing, are there any final things that you want to tell all of us about how it's best to communicate with you all and your teams?
Sure. Yeah. Like I mentioned, I live here in St. Louis. So if there's any additional involvement, I can, get with this group or just across the, the city, happy to do so. But for general, we have hello@bird.co, or Liz, I can share out my email. And if anybody wants to contact directly, they can. Or I could drop it in the chat here, actually.
And do just want to reiterate that, the industry is so new, and we recognize that there's always room to improve. And I think a lot of the feedback that you all have shared today and continue to share will help impact what our operations in St. Louis look like. So thank you. And also that feedback loop is always open.
Yes, thank you.
I'm also going to drop my email in the chat as well. I'm located in St. Peter's, so I'm in the area and can be available whenever.
Excellent. Thank you all for your willingness to talk with us. We may invite you back maybe towards the end of the summer season and see how things went and provide some additional feedback as we see the scooters out in the world. All right. In response from the companies, oh, okay. Yes, Kevin is asking about how we can share the discount programs. We will make sure we get that info and get that out to all of our partners in this room so that they can share that as well. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us to our next agenda item. We are going to give Jackie Knight about 5 minutes to give us a little overview about federal transportation funding and the changes and how that will impact St. Louis.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. I'm going to try to go through this quickly, but we thought that this could be a beneficial time to explain a little bit about how federal funding works in the city of St. Louis and in general the St. Louis region, and how the new infrastructure bill that was signed into law might impact mobility and specifically looking at enhancing mobility for people walking and biking. So to just back it up very quickly, how federal funding flows through the region is through East West Gateway Council of Governments. Melissa, I know, is on the call, but that is our regional metropolitan planning organization. So they are charged with dispersing those federal transportation dollars through their 8-county planning region. So counties and City of St. Louis have to prioritize their transportation projects that, you know, based on needs and what they're looking at updating. Typically, there's, you know, 3 sources of money that's pretty reliably available. That's our surface transportation program, our congestion mitigation air quality program, and then our transportation alternative program funding. So those are 3 that are pretty much always available. And then there's bigger federal funds as well. So I just wanted to highlight, so how it works is the cities will prioritize their projects. They'll fill out an application for funding. If they're successful, they'll get so much money from the federal government, and then they will have to provide a local match to make that project a reality. So just thinking about the new infrastructure bill, there's a couple things that we wanted to highlight in terms of how this might impact mobility for people walking and biking. But one thing that's exciting to note is that the Transportation Alternative Program, the TAP program, which specifically focuses on projects that enhance active transportation, that has about a 70% increase in funding from the last infrastructure bill. Examples of projects in St. Louis City that have received TAP funding are the Tower Grove Park access enhancements, where the City of St. Louis went and did some high visibility crosswalks, bump outs, making accessibility to the park a little bit better. Also the Louisiana Calm Streets project, which should be under construction soon, but basically implementing a bike boulevard on Louisiana Street in South St. Louis. And then I think most recently the Tucker Cycle Track, which was just in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch about 2 weeks ago, talking about that project. So those are some good examples, but in the infrastructure bill as a whole, that pot of money has increased significantly. The RAISE money, which was formerly Tiger and Build grants, that pot of money has also increased. A good example of that, those projects just recently, the St. Louis region, the Brickline Greenway was successful in securing a RAISE grant for constructing that new greenway. And then the West Florissant Avenue Great Streets project, which was a planning effort in 2014, was successful in securing money to enhance that corridor. So those are a couple of local examples. And then a new pot of money that is specifically related to mobility enhancements is this Safe Streets and Roads for All program, which allocates $200 million annually for the lifespan of this infrastructure bill. The main difference that I understand from this funding source versus the other funding sources is that this funding source will be directly available to cities and counties versus flowing through the state transportation agency. But it will be prioritized for places that have potentially pedestrian safety action plans, Vision Zero plans. The goal of this funding source is to really focus on our rising roadway fatalities and try to curb some of those alarming trends that we've seen in the past couple of years. So I hope that I tried to summarize that in 5 minutes. It's a lot to think about, but we just thought, Liz thought this would be a good time to just talk about how federal funding works, where we get it, and then what this new bill could potentially mean for enhancing street safety in St. Louis.
Thanks, Jackie. I'll be completely honest that this is so far over my head that I just appreciate that Jackie can even explain it in 5 minutes. And I think that we're going to continue talking about how transportation funding works, especially as there are more funding things coming up in the next couple months. Jackie, did you have a final thing you wanted to add?
I was just going to say, I can send some links to the different things, the different sources that I talked about, Liz, for meeting minutes. So I might email them to you and Dawn versus putting them in the chat after this meeting.
That sounds great. Okay, great. Thanks so much, Jackie. So we are going to move on to talking a little bit about subcommittees. I want to give a really brief introduction and ask for folks' feedback. So in our last meeting, we had Dr. Isom come and join us. And one of the things that we talked about was about education and what role the CMC might play in education, particularly around traffic violence, pedestrian injuries and fatalities, driver safety, kind of related issues to the enforcement that Dr. Isom is taking on. So we've had a couple of conversations in the last few weeks about what that might look like. And we really wanted to hear from the CMC membership about what things you're interested in and might want to participate in, and also where you think that focus should be, where can we actually be useful and supportive. So we've put together a pretty quick survey. I've put it in the chat, but we're also going to send it out via email after this meeting to the full membership. So we really want to hear, like, what do you think is most important? Where should we focus? And this is part of our strategy to think about how we create subcommittees that have a defined charge and can help us move forward and work effectively with our partners in the city and across the region. So I want to encourage you to take a look, but if you have other thoughts or questions on education, to also keep those in mind and share them. And I want to open up some space if Taylor or Patrick have anything that they want to add to that before we move on.
I think that was perfect. Thank you for putting it out here and letting us discuss it offline.
Great. Awesome. Well, so we're going to move into our subcommittee updates. We're going to do these relatively quickly, and I am going to do a very quick screen share oops, I don't know if I can do that. I'm going to do a quick screen share to show what our subcommittees are up to, and then I'm going to ask Kevin to start with an update on traffic calming, and we'll just do a quick rundown. Give me 1 second.
As Liz, as you did that, I'll give my brief update. Our next traffic calming meeting will be next Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m. If you'd like to participate, please send me an email. The focus for now still is developing a traffic calming guide for neighborhood streets. We've got a good portion of a draft done, so we hope to have something to share with the full committee a little bit down the road. But yeah, my email's right there, but I'll drop it in the chat as well.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Sam?
Yeah, so we are the Open Streets and Parklets Subcommittee. We are just kind of still assessing what the city's role is to take on parklets going forward, and also just getting some more people and kind of identified to see if they'd be interested in doing some open streets type of events and things like that. So also we meet on, and our next meeting is March 8th from 10 to 10:30, 11-ish. So.
Great, thanks, Sam. Charles, for engagement.
Sure. Real quickly, we have, it's what we have done is we've done what we've outlined, and we were sent out an email to recruit new members and make sure that we're seeking diversity in our membership. We are setting up various day or weeks and times where we have a blog and we talk about specific elements of transportation in the blog. We've got one coming out soon. We are looking at, so we have a blog schedule. I think the other important thing is that we're trying to keep our promise around diversity. And so when we send out information, we're sending it out and casting it in a very wide net to try and get new members and or just people who want to volunteer or talk about community mobility.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Charles. Okay, so we have about 3 minutes left on this meeting. I want to just make one logistical update, which we will inform you about over email. There's a chance that our meeting will move. Likely it will move back 1 week at the same time on the same day. We're going to do a little bit of confirmation, but we're trying to accommodate a lot of schedules here. So we're just really grateful for everyone's participation and attention. I know for some folks, it's the middle of the workday. For other folks, it's the middle of lunch. So we are just really grateful that you are all here participating. If there are any final concerns, questions, things that came up that you want to be sure to address, we have just a few minutes if you want to raise your hand. Sam has an announcement.
We got there quick. Yeah, I just want to, we were talking about Dr. Isom being on the call, things like that. And I just wanted to drop in the chat, hot off the presses, TrailNet just finished our 2021 crash report, which is an in-depth look at all pedestrian, bike, and fatal car crashes in St. Louis City and St. Louis County. So we literally just finished this morning. You guys are getting a sneak peek. It's not even on our website yet. That's the PDF right there. Liz, I would love to talk about this at our next meeting and just kind of go through things we've gone through. So
yes,
check the TrailNet social medias and things like that to see more in depth on that. So yeah, we are really excited. A lot of people put a lot of hard work into this, and so feel free to take a look at it. And also, I might toss it to Scott or Matt Bernstein on this, but there is a event this weekend for that Bloomberg Asphalt Art Grant project. Scott, that's open to the public, correct? On Hamilton.
Yes, thanks, Sam. So I think we might push that back a little bit. WashU and myself attended one of the classes with the with St. Louis Artworks last Saturday, and I think the conversation was we'd push that back a little bit after consulting with the teaching artists, just to give the students a little more time to develop some concepts, and we thought we might get a little better dialogue if they've had a little more time to work. So stay tuned. But yes, we'll have some type of engagement event for that before too long.
And we will email everyone when we have the info on the Bloomberg event. It would be great to see CMC members out there. All right, well, we are right at 2 o'clock. Very grateful again for all of your time. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you again in March. Take care.